then my plan is to spend the night in Portland somewhere. Tomorrow, meet up with my daughter. He's going to drive down from home to meet me, take care of some personal matters involving the purchase of a new car that she's going to buy. I have to sign off the car she's trading in because my name is on it. Plus, I have to get my license renewed as well. This is the exit coming up from I495. I will be exiting here to get on 290 east from Worcester and on 495, which will take me up toward New Hampshire and Maine in that direction. So I'm currently about 10 to 15 miles from Worcester, Massachusetts. I will be driving through Worcester within the next 20 minutes. Don't know if I'm going to hold on to this video long enough. I'll try to get a video of that. I'm going through the city of Worcester. This is exit 10 on the Mass Pike for East 290, Mass 12, and South 395. 395 will take you down into Connecticut to New London. This is a electronically tolled highway, so if you do not have a transponder, they will bill you by mail if you use this highway. But tolls are pretty reasonable on it, so I take it. It's only a few bucks to go and exit on this. So what do I want to talk about this morning? I was thinking about sharing my experience in the Jehovah's Witness religion. I had mentioned that there were two women that I think would have married me if the religion would have allowed it. And I mentioned the second one. I went into some detail as to what happened with all that second woman that I encountered. The first one I encountered was when my marriage with my second wife was on its way out. She kind of came into my life at that point. Okay, this is 4 miles to Worcester, Shrewsbury, 10 miles, Marlborough, 22 more miles. In Marlborough is where I pick up I495 north. So getting back, I counted that first one. I was still married to my second wife. The marriage at that point was not working out well at all. I knew it was on its way out anyway, and that was after my youngest daughter was born. She was still a baby at that point. And yeah. I mean, I think this woman sensed that. And so it started when we worked a lot, the ministry worked together. And we definitely were starting to have a connection with one another. And then her father, who was an elder religion, ordered her to not be allowed to work with me in the ministry work anymore. I think he kind of caught on to what was happening. Yeah, I noticed that her parents, her mother really liked me a lot. And her father did too, in spite of the way he was behaving. I fit in really well with their family. They invited me frequently, included me frequently in things that they did. But of course, the official position of that religion is you're not supposed to get a divorce, especially a divorce and then marry another person that perhaps might be better for you than the other one was. But they highly frown on it. Well, I would have been kicked out, or could have been, for doing that, as well as her. But the father was an elder in the religion, so now coming into downtown Worcester, this is a morning rush for this city, so maybe some traffic for the next few minutes here. So once our father kind of caught on to what was happening, they kind of kept her away from me after that. But there are some things that really stick in my mind about that whole situation. One occasion I invited her to dinner at the house with a few others, of course. I wouldn't have never invited her just her to dinner under the circumstances. But I said a prayer to God that if she really is the right woman for me, the woman I'm meant to spend my life with, that she would sip this wine with me that I'm going to serve, and she would sip the glass exact same time as me. That when I went to take my first sip out of the glass of wine, she would do it also at the same time as me. She would pick up that glass and sip that wine for me. So I prayed to God that if she really was the right woman for me, that because she was 11 years younger than me, it wasn't like she was only 20 years old. She was a grown woman. She had her own job. She had her own apartment. She had her stuff together, you know, financially and other ways. So I prayed that if she really was the right woman for me, that she would sip this wine with me at the dinner meal. And so I served the wine, and you know, I didn't tell anybody about this prayer, of course. It was between me and God. And it turned out she sipped the wine with me. And I was amazed. It was like played out perfectly. Like she picked up that glass exact same time as me. Sipped that wine exact same time as me. We sat next to each other the whole evening. I knew at that point this was a potential answer to the prayer. Even though I was still married, my wife was there, of course. I didn't really say anything about this prayer. But we're now coming up downtown Worcester is on the left. So it turned out we sat beside each other the whole evening and played card games and stuff. There were like 4 or 5 people there. And she sat beside me almost the whole evening. But then my wife at the time caught on to what was happening. And then she went to the elders and complained about it and everything. And so that kind of really put a damper on that whole thing. And they totally started keeping her away from me. However, another thing that happened that really sticks out in my mind even after that was family invited me and wife and the baby to go to the bowling alley to go bowling with them. And she was there that night with them, and I was pretty surprised that she showed up with them that night because they were trying to keep her away from me and everything. So my daughter, the youngest one that I'm now estranged from currently, she was still a toddler, young toddler, just starting to walk and run around. So we were in the bowling alley, and you know, she was running around like a normal child would do that age, trying to. So I picked her up, put her on my lap, you know, and kept her still on my lap, and they were all there, and this woman's mother told me, well, don't you think you should spank her for running around? And before I could even say anything to reply to it, this woman came out to her mother and told her mother off for saying that to me. And reprimanded her mother for telling me to spank her in public, that it would be inappropriate to do that at the bowling alley. And so her mother, this woman, stuck up for me in front of her own mother. So I knew at that point this woman loved me. She stuck up for me in front of to her own mother. I At that point, I knew she was the one. But again, the big question, how do you get over the hump of the religion, the hump that I was still married to somebody? Because my wife at the time was complaining that I didn't discipline my kids, and I didn't never do this, I didn't never do that. I was constantly going to the elders, complaining about, making up things to complain about. And I felt that, why am I going to spank a 1.5-year-old child? She doesn't know any better, for one. Why not just put her on my lap and keep her still? Isn't that better than spanking her? Why not just keep her on my lap and keep her still and hold her on my lap? Rather than, isn't that a much more positive way to deal with that than to take her back outside and spank her for it? She doesn't even know any better at that age. So that's how I felt about it. Of course, my wife at the time complained that she wanted me to spank my children for every little thing. I wasn't that kind of a parent. It wasn't going to be for anybody. It wasn't going to be that way for the religion. It wasn't going to be that way for anybody else. So we have now passed Worcester. Still have the video going, so I'm going to keep talking. The video keeps going. That was another remarkable thing that happened, and I knew after that incident that this woman really loved me. I could have imagined being married to her and her sticking up for me. If somebody said something inappropriate or something, she would have been there. She would have defended me. You know, that really struck me. So eventually, this was, I think, back in 2004, this happened. And later that year, my ex-wife, the first one, died of cancer, and I got my kids back, but they, by then, this woman was totally kept to me. She wasn't allowed to have anything to do with me. But I would call up the radio station and call in songs for her, hoping she would hear them at work or something. I would dedicate the most beautiful songs to her on the radio, hoping that she would recognize my voice when I called it in. I wouldn't say who the songs were for on the air due to the situation, but I was hoping that, I knew she listened to that station at work. I was hoping that she would hear it. And there was one time when, and I don't know if this is a coincidence, but I dedicated the song to her, Barbra Streisand's Evergreen song. And that night there was a meeting, and she parked next to me that night. So I don't really know if that meant that she got that song, or it was just a coincidence. I'll never know, but this went on for probably a year and a half. And then, like I say, 2004, first wife died of cancer. I got my kids, full custody, 2 kids that were in New York with her. And then my second wife didn't really treat them all that great at all. And I was working a lot of hours, as I touched on in the previous video. video at that time. And my daughter tried to hang herself because she was so unhappy. She had just, left New York, and she really liked her step-grandmother, who wasn't taking halfway decent care of her. And then had to go with my ex-wife, who she would just instigate things with those kids, and then she would go to the elders and say, I'm not disciplining them at all, but she would be the primary instigator to get them to act up, so then that she could say that I'm not disciplining them enough. So I touched on this in the previous video. I formulated a plan to solve that problem by selling the house and moving to northern Maine from there, taking the money and buying a cheaper place so that I wouldn't have to work anymore. I quit that job. Later, 2004, I quit the job after I bought that place. But then that meant moving away from this woman, and her family begged me to stay. Her parents begged me to not move. Of course, I couldn't have anything to do with this woman anymore with this situation. So I did end up moving away, but then that wasn't the end of the story. In summer of 2005, after my ex-wife left me, I was beginning to file for divorce proceedings. Their family invited me to come down where they were, spend a couple of days because we were having the assembly, and so they let me have dinner with her. They were over there at their house, and she came over and we had dinner together. That was really nice. And then, but she had another kind of boyfriend, mom that came to stay there. So that I thought that was the end of it there. She's probably going to end up with this guy, and kind of thought it was a lost cause at that point. I left, and then come November of 2005, the Holton congregation that I was with had a remodeling done on their building. So when they do that, they invite people from other areas to come and help out. So this woman came to Holton. It was about a 5-hour drive to help out with the project. I didn't know if she was coming. So I showed up there, and there she was. We ended up working together the whole day. And this leads me to another thing that happened that I forgot to mention. That even before I moved away, they had another one of those remodeling projects in New Hampshire, and I went. She ended up being there. We ended up working on the roof together the whole day with each other. It was beautiful. I mean, it was a beautiful experience. But then, once that was done, it was back to the way it was. Of course, nobody knew we were up there together, really. There was nobody that really was paying any close attention, so we could do that and kind of get away with it, spend that kind of time together. But then this time here, when she came up to Alton, we worked together the whole entire day. But I forgot what we were doing, and nobody seemed to really, it didn't really seem to matter to anybody because nobody there knew really that situation, or at least I don't think they did. And then she invited me to come back down and let my daughter spend time with her, which I did, but then her father intervened again, and he wouldn't even let me drop my daughter off at her apartment. He told me he demanded that I go to their house first, and that he would have to go with me to drop my daughter off at her apartment. So I complied with his request, and I let him come with me, and then he reprimanded me. Well, if you will have it with another woman, you're going to be kicked out of the religion or disfellowshipped if you do that, and went on and lectured me on the way home, or not way home, way back to his house. He spent the whole time lecturing me about, what's going to happen to you if you, you got to try to work it out with your ex-wife, because by then the divorce was getting ready to be finalized. And my ex was actually living in that area at that time. So I did go over there and spend a little bit of time with my daughter, because she trying to look like a goody two-shoe, in front of the elders, asked me to go, so I did. I didn't stay long, but I did go. And then I went back one more time. It was in the spring of 2006. The divorce had been finalized and everything. And I went back to spend a few more days with her family again. And they actually allowed her to spend an evening with me at the parents' house, playing music and everything. We had a wonderful time, even dancing and stuff, and even shared, dinner together, kind of. Everybody was there, but she came over there, we had dinner, and then I was getting ready to leave, and I asked her mother if I could have some pictures of the family, that she was in some of the pictures. Her mother said, yeah, take them if you want. So I took the pictures. And, we were planning to go to outings that summer together with the family. They wanted me to go with them. And her as well, probably would have been included in these outings, I'm sure. But then her father just stepped in there and demanded that I return the pictures. It just turned into a real, he just totally went dark on the whole thing. So I complied with his wishes. I returned the pictures. I was pretty mad at that point. I said, well, I guess I'm just not going to really deal much with this anymore. It's just too much of a hassle. So I have to get over to the left here. There are a lot of cars looking to get on here. 495, so northbound. I'm going to have to move over now. Well, it's too late. So there was one. Actually, it went as far as in the spring when I went that last time. Her father took me and I was in there before once or twice, to Grafton Notch State Park, and told me this is one of her favorite spots. And he took me there, and it was one of my favorite spots also. He told me it was one of her favorite spots she enjoyed going to. So I was praying to God that I could marry her in the future, and out loud I was doing it. And there was a cliff next to me, and I didn't realize that her father was standing on that cliff, about at the top of it, right where I was standing. And I was praying out loud, saying that I could marry this person to God. Could I? I would like to. And her father heard the whole thing. I didn't realize it. I looked up, and there he was, and I said to myself, oh, shucks. I can't believe, I said this to myself, that he's standing right there. And he didn't really say anything to me or anything, but he did hear the whole thing. And maybe that's what was the kicker for him. I don't really know, because after that visit, that was it. The story was over. I never really saw her again after that. After that visit. And that was in 2006. So that's the story of the first person that I encountered. That's the only woman that I ever went to the point of dedicating beautiful songs on the radio for. But, as I've said in previous videos, yeah, I didn't feel all that great about the outcome, but what more could I do other than move on from it? So after that, I did move on, and eventually woman number 2 did come in the picture with me. After that happened with that, about the same time, spring, that's when woman number 2 began to enter the picture. It's almost like I could see God trying to do something here, but as I said in the previous video, the rules of that religion got in the way of what I think God was really trying to put together there. Again, I would think that if the rules of the religion weren't what they were, this first woman likely would have went on to marry me, perhaps. Getting off 290 ends here and merges with 495, and I'm going north toward Lowell and Lawrence, Massachusetts, and then on to New Hampshire and then into Maine. These are stories that I've shared with a few people, but the rules of that religion dictated I couldn't date anybody else, I couldn't marry anybody else, because my ex, they viewed it that in the eyes of God, I was still married to her, and to my ex, even though I was divorced, I was still married in God's eyes. That's how they viewed it. I did not agree with it. And with the evidence I presented here, that's not how God viewed it, because there were two women that He did bring into my life that could have potentially resulted in marriage and perhaps a happy, fulfilling relationship. And now on I495 Worcester Massachusetts. That story I shared. If you listen to my videos, I hope you enjoyed the story about both women, even though they didn't result in a positive outcome either time, at least. It got me to realize that God did not disapprove of that divorce, because He was trying to bring some people into my life, new people and better people, actually. And the rules of the religion impeded that from happening, blocked it. But the rules of that religion, I was eternally married to my ex, and I knew that wasn't really true, because why would God be answering these prayers if that was really true? Why would He have answered the prayer of this woman sipping that wine with me? Why would that prayer have been answered positively if God really felt I was still married to this ex that I had? Even at that point, when I was still technically married to my ex, she was right there in the room when that prayer was answered. So in the eyes of God, that relationship was already finished, because He doesn't look at time like we do. In His eyes, that relationship was already history. So we have 4 more miles to Bolton, 36 more miles to Lawrence, 55 to Salisbury, which is near the New Hampshire line. Salisbury is on the coast as well. There's a nice beach there on the ocean. So again, why would God answer a prayer if I was still married? Why would He answer it in the affirmative if He still considered me married to my ex, even at that point when I was still not even separated yet? He answered that prayer. That woman sipped that glass of wine with me, just like I prayed it would happen. Why would that prayer have been answered like that if He didn't think it would be right to get a divorce from that woman that was with me?